Welcome to my channel. It's incredible how something as ordinary as a 5-cent coin can carry with it layers of history, artistry, mystery, and even surprising value. To the average person, a 1991 Roosevelt 5-cent coin with a P mint mark might look like any other nickel you'd dig out from your couch cushions or get back as change at the grocery store. But behind this simple piece of metal lies a fascinating story that brings together American history, numismatic oddities, and the unexpected thrill of hidden treasure. And by the time we're done, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. Now, let's clear up one important detail right away. Roosevelt isn't actually on the nickel. That spot, as you might know, belongs to Thomas Jefferson. So what gives? Isn't the Roosevelt dime the one with the P mint mark in 1991? That's right. The 5-cent coin features Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States. The Roosevelt dime is the 10-cent coin. However, in the world of numismatics, confusion is common, and sometimes, it's part of the fun. In this case, what we're talking about is a 1991 Roosevelt dime, not a nickel. But people often confuse coin types when they first get into collecting, so it's worth straightening out. The Roosevelt dime with a P mint mark from 1991 is the focus today, and it's far more than just pocket change. The P mint mark indicates that the coin was minted in Philadelphia. In 1991, Philadelphia struck hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes. With such high numbers, most coins from this year are considered common, and they typically don't attract much attention. But as with many collectibles, it's the fine details, the rare anomalies, and the pristine conditions that elevate a coin from ordinary to extraordinary. So how does the 1991 Roosevelt dime with a P mint mark measure up? In circulated condition, it's usually worth no more than its face value, 10 cents. But in mint state, especially at MS67 or higher, it becomes a completely different story. And here's where the surprise kicks in. One particular specimen of this coin, graded in top-tier condition, was recently sold for an astonishing $168. That's right. A dime turned into $168, simply because of its rarity in that condition. But how is that possible? Why would anyone pay that much for a coin they could find in circulation? The answer lies in scarcity, demand, and condition. Even though the mint struck over 1 billion of these dimes in 1991, very few were preserved well enough to achieve a high-grade certification. Most entered circulation, bouncing around in pockets, purses, vending machines, and cash registers, accumulating wear and tear along the way. The handful that avoided this fate, perhaps tucked away in a collection, or forgotten in a sealed mint set, emerged decades later as time capsules, their surfaces pristine and unmarred. Interestingly, the mint didn't strike proof dimes in Philadelphia in 1991. Proof coins that year were made in San Francisco and carry the S mint mark. So if you have a brilliant, mirror-like 1991 dime with an S on it, it likely came from a special proof set and was never intended for circulation. But the P dimes? Those were meant for everyday use. Which makes their survival in flawless condition all the more remarkable. Beyond just condition, there's also the question of errors and varieties. Every so often, coins are struck with mistakes, double dies, off-center strikes, missing elements, and these errors can make them incredibly desirable to collectors. While the 1991 P dime isn't widely known for errors, it's always worth checking. A double die obverse, for instance, would show slight doubling on the date, lettering, or Roosevelt's profile. These subtle anomalies can boost a coin's value significantly, sometimes into the hundreds or even thousands, depending on severity and demand. What fascinates many collectors is how these seemingly minor variations can cause such huge differences in value. A 1991 P dime in average circulated condition is worth a dime. In brilliant uncirculated condition, it might be worth a few dollars. But in MS67 with full bands, a grading term referring to the clarity of the horizontal lines on the torch, it could sell for $100 or more. And at MS68? You're looking at that impressive $168 sale, and potentially even more if demand grows or another coin doesn't surface in that grade. This unpredictability is what makes coin collecting so exciting. You never know what might be lurking in your change jar. One person's dime might be another's treasure, literally. And while the odds of finding a pristine 1991 P dime in circulation today are slim, they're not zero. Stories regularly emerge of people discovering rare or high-grade coins in rolls, jars, and old coin books. It's a modern-day treasure hunt. Even if you're not a seasoned collector, learning about coins like the 1991 P. Roosevelt dime opens up a new way of looking at the world. Coins are more than just currency, they're miniature pieces of history, art, and culture. They tell stories of the people they honor, the times they were made, and the hands they passed through. A single coin can connect us to decades of American life, from politics and war to economic shifts and cultural milestones. In a world that's constantly changing, some things remain quiet, unassuming, and often forgotten, until history calls them back to center stage. Imagine reaching into an old drawer, an attic box, or a vintage coin jar and pulling out a dull, nickel-colored coin from 1961. It's just a 5-cent piece, small, light, and easily overlooked. But what if I told you that one such coin, seemingly insignificant, recently sold for $1.61? Before we get to that, let's take a journey together. A journey back to 1961, a year filled with promise, turbulence, and transformation. This was the year John F. Kennedy became President of the United States. The Cold War was heating up, and the space race was underway. The United States, brimming with ambition and uncertainty, stood on the edge of a new frontier. In this backdrop, everyday Americans went about their business, buying coffee for a dime, a movie ticket for less than $1, and tossing nickels into gumball machines. One of those nickels, produced in the hundreds of millions, was the 1961 Jefferson nickel. Most people didn't think twice about it. They spent it, saved it, dropped it between car seats. But for collectors, historians, and keen-eyed hobbyists, this coin tells a story worth far more than 5 cents. The 1961 Jefferson nickel was minted during a time of stability for U.S. coinage. Designed by Felix Schlag, this coin had already been circulating since 1938. The design itself was part of a national competition, with Schlag's depiction of founding father Thomas Jefferson chosen among 390 entries. His profile portrait on the obverse, paired with the stately depiction of Jefferson's home, Monticello, on the reverse, had become a familiar sight in American pockets for over 2 decades by 1961. But not all Jefferson nickels are created equal. And that's where things get fascinating. In 1961, the United States Mint produced the nickel at 2 facilities, Philadelphia and Denver. The Philadelphia Mint, which didn't use mint marks at the time, struck over 76 million nickels. Meanwhile, the Denver Mint, identifiable by the D mint mark on the reverse to the right of Monticello, produced a staggering 229 million nickels. That's over 300 million nickels in total, a colossal number. So how could one of them be worth over $150 today? Let's start with what collectors look for. In the world of numismatics, the study and collection of coins, value comes from a delicate blend of rarity, condition, error, and historical context. For the 1961 nickel, a few key factors come into play. First, minting errors. Believe it or not, mistakes can make a coin far more valuable than its flawless siblings. But let's go deeper into the process. Most 1961 nickels were struck with worn dies. This is because the mint, facing increased demand and limited budgets, often used dies well beyond their optimal lifespan. The result? Weak strikes, low detail, and blurry features. But occasionally, a fresh die would strike a coin with extraordinary clarity. These are the unicorns collectors search for. That story, or one very much like it, has played out more than once in the world of coin collecting. It's not just about money. Coins like the 1961 nickel represent tangible pieces of history. They were there during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the March on Washington, the Beatles' first album, and the moon landing. They passed from hand to hand, Silently witnessing the evolution of America, collectors don't just hunt coins, they chase stories. And every coin tells one. But not all 1961 nickels are created equal. As we said earlier, there are two major varieties, the Philadelphia and Denver mintings. While Denver produced significantly more coins, it also has more known examples of full step strikes. Why? Likely due to better die maintenance during that year. The Philadelphia issues, although fewer in number, have far fewer full steps examples, making them arguably more desirable in high grades, and let's not forget the proof coins. Proof coins aren't meant for circulation. They're made for collectors, struck with specially polished dies and planchets to produce a mirror-like finish. In 1961, the Philadelphia Mint produced just under 3.3 million proof sets. These coins are often preserved in much better condition and are easier to find in high grades. But because they were made for collectors, they're less rare than high-grade circulation strikes. Still, a proof 1961 nickel with flawless surfaces can bring strong prices at auction. For the 1961 nickel, prices vary widely. A common worn example? Still just 5 cents. A well-preserved uncirculated one? Maybe $1 or $2. But a certified, mint state coin with full steps? That's where things get interesting. In fact, at the time of this recording, a top-graded 1961 D. Jefferson nickel with full steps recently sold for $161 at auction. That's 3,220 times its face value. So what's the takeaway? That the next time you find a handful of change, take a closer look. Especially at those nickels. The 1961 Jefferson nickel may seem ordinary, but hidden among the masses are treasures waiting to be discovered. Treasures that connect us to history, to family, and to the subtle art of paying attention, because sometimes, the difference between 5 cents and $161 is just a matter of perspective, and a little knowledge. So go check your drawers. Look through your coin jars.